Did you know that the USA wasted $17 billion on a megaproject that has not been used until today and just stands completely useless in the area? Or that there is a capital built for millions of people and today it is completely empty? Today we will look together at the top 5 of these useless megaprojects. And we're sending $1,000 to one of our subscribers, so consider subscribing. Number 5. Ciudad Real Central Airport, Spain. Spain is one of the most important and popular tourist destinations in Europe, and this was an important consideration when Ciudad Real Central Airport was developed. It was to become the destination for leisure travelers within Spain as well as for international visitors. The vision of this airport was to make it an alternative to the already heavily congested main airport in Madrid. The new airport had one of the 5 longest runways in Europe and could serve 2.25 million passengers per year. However, this is a fairly small number compared to Madrid's passenger capacity of 69 million. However, expansion plans were already underway to increase capacity up to 10 million per year. When the airport finally went into operation in 2009, the $1.3 billion outlay seemed to have been a justifiable investment. In 2012, however, all those plans came to a crashing halt when the company behind the project filed for bankruptcy. The problems began with the location of the airport. Even though it was called Central Airport, it was not central in any way, as it was 200 kilometers away from Madrid. This exacerbated the problems, as most passengers avoided traveling for hours to the remote location and many major airlines preferred to operate from the capital. As a result, the new airport was reduced to a single small airline just 1 year after it opened. By 2012, the airport had accumulated $349 million in debt. In 2014, the airport even became an abandoned site and was made famous by the popular British television show Top Gear. After several auctions failed, including an outrageous bid of $12,000, the airport was finally sold to new owners in 2019. During the current economic climate, businesses collapsed and profits shrank. Ciudad Real Airport was given a lifeline, but there was not much hope for passengers to return. The owners currently use the airport, due to its dry climate, long runway, and spaciousness, as a home for ground-based aircraft. As of August 2020, 65 aircraft have been parked here and expansions are underway to provide a storage facility for an additional 250 aircraft. This new storage approach for aircraft gave the airport a long-needed new business opportunity. However, all of the stored aircraft will eventually disappear when normal air traffic resumes. This huge, multi-billion-dollar megaproject remains virtually useless to passengers from around the world. Number 4. Highway H3, Hawaii. Next, we come to a breathtakingly beautiful highway in the state of Aloha in Hawaii. The 26-kilometer Interstate H3 passes through some of the most breathtaking scenery in the world. It is so stunning that there have been real concerns of motorists stopping and causing traffic hazards. However, the highway is as controversial as it is beautiful. The highway was first proposed in 1960 with defense considerations in mind, as the highway would connect Pearl Harbor Naval Base on the south side with Marine Corps Air Station on the east coast. As soon as construction was announced, it was immediately met with opposition from native Hawaiians, as well as some environmental groups. A route change to protect the surrounding valleys and environmental laws at the time delayed plans indefinitely. It was not until 26 years later that the environmental hurdles were cleared, when Congress exempted the project from environmental laws and paved the way for construction to finally begin in 1989. Then, in 1997, the highway finally opened, nearly 37 years after it was originally proposed. Interstate H3 is often considered an engineering feat because of the difficult terrain on which it is built and the advanced technologies used in its construction. In addition to the numerous tunnels, the highway runs almost entirely over viaducts to protect the local environment in the valleys below. Route changes, severe deterioration, and newer, even more expensive technologies resulted in the project going 5 times over budget. In total, this project cost $1.3 billion. That's about $50 million per kilometer. That is the most expensive price per kilometer in the world. Despite this enormous budget, this great highway is not for everyone. Critics believe it is a road to nowhere because the defense considerations of the 1960s are no longer relevant and the highway has no direct connection to downtown Honolulu. Then there are the native Hawaiians, a majority of whom refuse to use the highway. They think it is cursed because many religiously significant cultural sites were destroyed during its completion. This highway is a real achievement as far as megaprojects go. However, it remains useless for certain groups. Number 3. Forest City, Malaysia. Next on our list is a futuristic green smart city to be created from reclaimed land on some artificial islands and built around an artificial forest ecosystem. Forest City's location is attractive to investors who want to benefit from its proximity to the independent city-state of Singapore. Singapore is home to the second largest port in the world, and it has a thriving economy. Developers have already connected the city with Singapore through bridges. This has cut the distance between the two cities to just 20 minutes. Forest City will also have its own customs office, which will allow residents to move freely to and from Singapore. The design is to consist of many green innovations. Forest City will have houses with green roofs and vertical gardens that provide a refreshing jungle experience. The city's streets will have a multi-layered design, with the lower layer for parking and traffic, while the upper layer will include parks, transportation hubs, and sports facilities. The city is to be powered exclusively by renewable energy and completed by 2035 at the cost of $100 billion. One of the islands is already nearing completion with 50 apartment buildings, swimming pools, golf courses, and beaches on board. But even with this highly ambitious project, not everything is going smoothly. Some economic and political hurdles are already standing in the way of its progress. The project is being financed mainly by Chinese investors, and Chinese residents practically had a free pass to the city during the first years of construction. As a result, wealthy Chinese investors flocked to Forest City in 2019, unable to afford the enormous prices of housing in China. Approximately 80% of the property owners and residents were Chinese. Even the street signs were in Mandarin, and the schools that opened in the area even offered Mandarin classes. Malaysians simply could not afford these apartments. With property prices set only with Chinese investors in mind, this influx of Chinese residents and investors sparked a public outcry, with opponents of the project calling it a new form of colonialism. Thus, after a change in leadership, Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad banned foreigners from owning land in Forest City. As a result, many foreigners began to leave the city and new investors were discouraged. The next setback came in the form of the current global economic situation. Worldwide travel bans, Malaysia's movement control order meant that no new investors could move in. Due to the uncertainty from the project, many investors pulled out. As of early 2020, there were actually less than 400 people living in the housing developments, which is not much considering Forest City is designed for 690,000 people. Since then, the project has remained in flux, with some property sellers claiming that fewer than 15 homes have been sold in Forest City since the tough economy began. In addition, Country Garden had to lay off more than 1,000 of its Malaysian workers last year, signaling the epic downturn in the project's fortunes. Forest City was probably too futuristic and ambitious to really achieve from the start, and also too politically challenged to succeed anytime soon. Despite its billion-dollar investment, it's safe to assume that Forest City is currently a useless megaproject. Number 2. Naypyidaw, Myanmar. Next up is another megaproject that made it to top gear. This time, unfortunately, it's not just an airport, but an entire capital city. The capital of Myanmar, a new capital built from scratch. Myanmar's military leadership at the time secretly began building this new capital in 2002. Relocating a country's capital is not uncommon these days, as many countries, including Egypt, Brazil, and Pakistan, have also done so in the past. In the winter of 2005, Myanmar's leader announced the decision to the public, but he kept the name of the new capital a secret. 4 months later, the name Naypyidaw was finally revealed. It literally means the king's residence. The reason for this sudden capital shift was unknown. Some speculated that the military leaders were afraid of an attack from the sea, while others thought it was moved on the advice of astrologers, but some had to do with the former capital Yangon. Yangon is home to 7 million people, and the city is said to have reached its infrastructural limits, and its population is expected to double by 2050. Furthermore, the coastal city was established as the capital during the British rule of the country, benefiting the British Navy. It makes sense for Myanmar to move its capital to a more central location. The mega project was built very quickly, and to date, successive governments have invested up to $4 billion in the city. Naypyidaw actually has everything to attract visitors. Over 100 luxury hotels are divided into 3 hotel districts, a 20-lane highway, golf courses, museums, and even a replica of a landmark nearly 100 meters high. The new capital is home to less than 1 million residents, many of whom live in the suburbs that existed before the city became the capital. But why doesn't anyone want to live in this new city? A large gap in healthcare facilities, quality educational institutions, and economic opportunities makes most of the population reluctant to inhabit the city permanently. Thus, the city very often conveys an image of a ghost town. The incredible 20-lane highway is virtually devoid of cars. The city also has an airport, of course, which can handle 3.5 million passengers every year. But on a busy day, not even 1,000 people will actually use it. The shopping malls are only visited by the staff on weekends, while the hotels are mostly empty. Despite the obvious barrenness, there is a silver lining for the royal capital. Currently, it is probably the strangest capital in the world and remains useless to most people in the country. Number 1. Nuclear Repository, Yucca Mountain. We finished the list with a megaproject planned in view of a very sensitive global issue. Nuclear waste is not talked about much, but if not stored properly, it can cause really big natural disasters. Currently, nuclear waste is stored above ground near the power plants from which it comes. However, scientists agree that the safest permanent disposal solution is to store this dangerous waste deep and safely underground. In 1980, U.S. officials set out to find a permanent solution to this growing waste problem. Yucca Mountain in Nevada was identified as the most ideal option in 1987. It was located near the busiest nuclear test site in the U.S. and far from any population centers. The waste was to be disposed of in a tunnel complex about 300 meters below Yucca Mountain. In addition to its isolated location, the mountain consists of volcanic ash formed millions of years ago. This allows Yucca Mountain to absorb any radioactive waste without fracturing or crumbling. Yucca Mountains seemed like a great place for a repository on paper, but Nevadans were not thrilled with it. The general public and members of Congress strongly resisted the idea of becoming the only nuclear dump in the entire country. In addition, the official geologic and hydrologic research of Yucca Mountain was questioned. Opponents felt that the site was unsuitable for a repository because of the risk of contaminating a nearby water source. The water source flows into the Amargosa Valley and is used by Native Americans who have lived in the area for many years. Despite strong opposition, the project was eventually approved in 2002 and the Department of Energy resumed construction. However, opposition in Nevada grew even stronger. Among other things, they claimed that it would severely impact tourism in the state. For the opposition, the only reason Nevada was chosen for the camp was its smaller population and lower representation in Congress. By the time Barack Obama became president, the whole project was highly politicized, and in 2010, the Obama administration stopped funding it. 3 years later, however, a federal court ordered its resumption, but there has been little progress since. Nevada appears to have finally won the battle after 4 decades. $17 billion has been poured into this currently useless project. What do you think of these megaprojects? Do you think they will become useful at some point in the future? And now watch this video next.